So now moving on to item 48, the Community Resilience Partnership Fund. Item 48. Okay. We'll take the report as read, but are there comments that staff wanted to make on this before we move to questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just very briefly to help set the scene for you, the purpose of this report, coming back from the last time we were here in front of you, is just to sharpen up the focus a little bit more for you in terms of what the program's doing and how the program contributes to meeting the Housing First goals and what it seeks to do, particularly around the Housing First fifth principle, around ensuring those of the homeless have opportunities to build social connections and participate in local community initiatives. So we would put to you that that's a core piece of council business, as it were, in the community development space for this council for the last 20 years or so, more, possibly more. Councillor Buck will probably remind me better in terms of its work around community development in that space. Secondly, the paper also just teases out the exact roles and functions of some of the agencies involved, so the Methodist Mission as the leader and the holder of the funds, and notes the support that the likes of Te Whare Roimata can bring to the party as well in terms of their likely role. I guess the final point I'd like to make to you, Mr. Chair, is I guess an issue for council around credibility and reputation in this whole space of addressing homelessness. So we would submit that a contribution of some form would need to be made, particularly for our credibility if we are to continue to chair the governance group of the Housing First program in Christchurch. So I just would like to point those things out that no doubt the elected members.
So the staff recommendation recommends a figure of 200,000. Now I'm aware of some figures larger than that that have been considered previously, and I'm also aware of some consideration of whether the same could be achieved with a figure smaller than that. So I'd be interested in the thinking behind that figure of 200,000 that appears in the report, in the staff recommendation.
Sure. So this is our best quantification, if you like, to carry out the Community Connections program to its fullest effect, was this sum. So that's how we've come up with this sum here. We note separately some external funding sources that could be made, but largely they won't fund council or central government programs, and the best we'd do would be to work with other organisations. So the report we're putting in front of you is to carry out this initiative to its fullest effect. So you may wish to discuss and debate amongst yourselves how far along that continuum we would wish to support such a program.
So the more funds that are put in, the more is able to be done, is that correct?
Yes, in terms of this figure of $200,000 per year. So that's the estimated figure to carry out such a program to its fullest effect, to get the maximum benefit, to support the Housing First partnership, particularly around its fifth principle there.
Thank you. Sarah.
Thank you. A couple of quick questions. The first one, I mean, the reason that the report was actually sent back the last time wasn't to do with the depth of information on the actual program itself. I think we were all pretty convinced that it's a worthwhile program. It's just that we had a council resolution which asked for other funding sources to be found, and that wasn't in the initial report, which is why we asked for the information to come separately. So it's clear from that there are other funders available who would be willing to help fund once this is up and running. So, because that's what the information that you've provided to us says. So I'm just wondering if what we were able to do is, so for example, do number 3, and then actually as part of that actually request that staff or the maybe appropriate people within the Housing First program apply to those other funders for ongoing support.
Sorry, beg your pardon, Councillor, are you talking number 3 in terms of the staff recommendation?
Yeah, so maybe before number 4, because number 4 sort of assumes that we're not going to apply for other funding and we're just going to, if it's working well, we'll just fund it again. Whereas actually the council resolution that we had sort of, I guess, 2 times ago that this came, was very clear that we wanted other funding applied for, if that was possible, and it's clearly possible And it might be that if they don't fund it, then a new application is made to this fund for an additional 200,000. It wouldn't be difficult to do.
Well, certainly we have had low-level discussions about how we might go process this, and we could continue. Well, I think it's probably a good idea if we continue to offer that level of support to the wider collective group. But I think we really need this initial amount of funding, whatever amount you decide, because one of the main learnings about people, as you know, who get housed is that once they get housed, they need to be connected back to the community. So we really need to get that established. It seemed to me from talking to these various funding agencies that there will be funds and they will be positive in the future.
Yeah.
Like even MSD are expressing interest in funding more positions once it gets up and starts running.
Yeah.
So yes, certainly, and I think staff intend to do that. We intend to continue those discussions.
Yeah, so I'd like to suggest that that we put something in there specifically about continuing the work with other funders, because I think that's really important, that we don't just assume that we're just going to keep doing this ourselves. We know that MSD's got an extra sort of $65 million for this type of approach, and as they're developing how that's going to work, and it sounds like they're interested, and other funders are interested as well, and that was clear in the memo.
I have to say that council's work would be in partnership with the collective that are very much involved in the Housing First model. It wouldn't be council separate from those people. We'd be working together, because
right.
those are the agencies that are likely to be funded, not us.
Yeah. So the other one is.
So how did you want to pick that up, Sarah? You just want to note that there is an expectation that, or
not note, request that. Request that staff work with the Housing First program and other funders.
Request that staff work with.
I'm not quite sure who the appropriate people are for accessing other funding for the program agencies, or because it's clear that funding's available. It would be in addition to ours, maybe even. It'd make the program go much further.
So the wording that we've got in this new item 4, request that staff work with the collective to continue to secure funding from other providers.
Yeah.
To continue investigating.
Yeah.
Continue to investigate securing funding.
Yeah. I mean, we don't want to just do the investigation. We want to actually apply for them if they're available. So whether we can
investigate and secure.
And secure. Yeah.
Is it contiguous action? So it doesn't hold
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not saying instead of the first year's funding. Yeah. Three's still there, which is the $200,000 for this year. Yeah. And I had another question around what's number 5 now, and that it says subject to the return of a satisfactory monitoring report. I mean, who has the delegation to decide whether it's satisfactory or not? And if we did secure other funding, I'm saying $200,000 will get the most out of this at this point, and if there was other funding sourced and there was a satisfactory monitoring report at this point, we would still give an extra 200,000, which wouldn't be needed. So are we able to just say, yeah, up to, or maybe it just comes back for a new decision?
So where is the monitoring report intended to come to? Who will decide whether the monitoring report is satisfactory or not?
Be quite straight. I mean, these ones, they seem quite straightforward to come to council through this fund, so it'd be quite good to just bring it back to us again. Was
it the intention that the monitoring report would come to council so that council could decide that it was satisfactory?
Yeah. Yes, we'd be looking to secure or get that information, working with MSD in terms of their monitoring of the program as well. So.
Yeah, but who would make the decision?
But then where would that report come to once it arrived in this building?
We would imagine a social committee in the first instance.
But then through to council for a new decision, or
yes.
Okay, so subject to the to capture this then, subject to the return of a monitoring report to the satisfaction of council.
Yeah.
The council makes
supports in principle of a grant, an additional grant of up to $200,000.
Well,
Because it's an in principle, we're saying yes, just in case we don't get extra funding.
I thought what we were trying to reflect, though, was that if there was funding able to be granted from elsewhere, that we reduced the 200,000 by that amount.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a point of order? There are other people have got questions.
Yeah, no. I'm assuming that having made changes, Sarah's then going to move this with the changes, and then there will be the opportunity for other questions.
I'm suggesting that other questions might bring out some answers around
Bill,
this.
which standing order do you have a point of order on?
Or
No,
may
but
lead
which
to...
standing order was your point of order on? What was the point of order?
Okay, I'm not allowing the point of order anyway. Continue with the questions, and if I'm assuming that you'll move this with the changes,
Yeah.
and then we'll get a seconder for it. Then we'll continue with more questions, and if people want to move amendments, or when we get into debate, signal that they're intending voting against parts of this, or moving amendments to change parts of it, then that's how we'll proceed.
So my last
Sarah.
question is to do with the one that Yanni asked on the previous fund, and that was, sorry, Jenny, what's left in the fund? So we don't have anything in the report which says what's left for allocation to other. Yeah, well, that's it. So, as I say, same as Yanni's one last time, but we'd be good to have that.
Yeah.
So the current balance as at 7 July was $2,255,000.
So, Sarah, did you want to make some changes to clause 5? So, yeah. Yeah, all right. So you're wanting to move what we've got here that's obviously amended as a result of your questions? Yeah, all right. So, Mike, you'll second that. All right, great. Now let's continue with questions. So, Phil.
My question, I realise that the wording in there is a partnership, but I just want to check with the staff around applying for other funds, while we would support them as per the additional recommendation there. Am I right that in fact it will be the collective who apply for the funding, not City Council? That's not our role. I just want to clarify that, just so we're all clear.
Yes, that was the point I was making previously, maybe not clearly enough, that we would be supporting the wider partnership group to make the funding. So those agencies would be the ones making the funding application. We'd just be working with them to try and make that happen.
Thanks, Jenny.
Jimmy.
Okay, thank you. Regarding to the paragraph 4.5 on page 6. Can you explain to us? I'm not sure what I mean. The fund also seeks to secure our future in the eastern part of the Christchurch and being informed by evidence. I just want to know this by case, is it by case or by geography?
Thank you, Councillor Chen. We had a staff member in the Community Services Group notes that in the covering report. I'm not sure if Mary wished to comment on that as part of the covering report. Just in the 4.5, Mary, and the key points on the covering note.
So this was this in the earlier report are you talking about? Sorry.
No.
So
The funding system for the eastern parts of Christchurch. He's asking.
So I know nothing about this project at all, Paul. So I won't be able to answer.
That's okay.
This.
Yeah. No, unfortunately, we.
I thought that related to the large wider fund. The objects of it's talking about the wider objects of the fund, Mary, the wider objects of the Resilience Partnership Fund. That's what it's referring to.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, the other two.
The fund.
My concern is if those applications
Right. Okay. So
completely comply with the objective of Community Resilience Fund, they are eligible, rather than just specific area. This is my concern.
So that's why we thought you might wanted to make a comment about that. Yeah. So the question is, what has this what is this relevance to this application? But it's the wider purpose of the Resilience Fund that's referring to. So does that answer the question?
Yeah.
That's one of the purposes of this Community Resilience Partnership Fund that was set up. And it's not just a council fund, it has a central government Ministry of Health funding in here as well, and it grew out of the resilience program after the earthquakes. So that's just one of the principles of the wider fund.
Okay.
Yeah, not about this project. That's right.
The criteria, those are the criteria on which you prioritise, they're not the criteria that every application has to meet.
Okay, thank you.
These are still questions, are they, Yanni?
So just wanted to check, can the Community Resilience Fund be used for services that support individuals?
I don't think so. No, I don't
No.
think that's appropriate. No.
So what is this project doing? Because I thought it was going around working with the individuals.
Well, yeah, I suppose at an operational level, yes, it is working at individuals, but it is working within the homeless community to support them get on track, as we say in the report, to build social connections and to feel grounded in their communities, be able to participate in activities and initiatives and those sorts of things. So in other words, the point of difference that council can make to this program. So with the assessment table there that you'll see in the report, that's the same as the previous report that was in front of you. So
Yeah, I'm just like, sort of, I can't see why the fund wouldn't be able to help services to support individuals.
It wasn't set up for that purpose.
Well, can I just say that it's not about providing specific social work interventions to individuals. It's about providing a wider community network of connections, so individuals can fit back into the community.
So my understanding, so there'll be a peer worker employed, and they will go around and visit individuals and connect them to different things, services.
Well, they'll be working with the other staff at the Housing First program, and they'll be working with programs that are already provided at Te Whare Roimata and various other agencies, and then the individuals will already have been suitable for or want to participate in various programs. So they'll be networking and navigating and working generally around, and they'll be looking for what extra programs need to be set up and that sort of thing.
Right. It's just, and I'm just trying to understand, like, the advice that we've had over the street worker outreach program is basically saying that it's totally ineligible because it's an existing role which provides services and support to individuals, which seems to be almost identical to what this service is. And I just, like, I'm happy to support this, but I wondered if we needed to change the criteria or at least have some consistency so that other projects that we might like to consider funding can be considered.
I don't think the one that we've just considered to fund for these the people in the city, the homeless and begging community, it's coming out of the Resilience Fund, out of the Capital Endowment Fund,
so
which has got different criteria.
No, I understand that, but
that's because it's not eligible for this fund.
Oh, that's right.
But I had hoped that we could reduce this amount by the amount that, so I will foreshadow an amendment to reduce the amount by the amount that was granted to that fund.
So I was just trying to understand, because one of the things that I would like to consider is that this funding should be taken out of the endowment fund rather than the CRAP fund. But I don't know, if the criteria doesn't fit the previous one and it doesn't fit the street worker outreach, but it fits this, it seems a very inconsistent way of applying funding for what, as I perceive it, are three quite similar initiatives working with communities of individuals within a certain sector to try and find some positive solutions. And that's what I'm struggling with, because I just can't see how we're consistently applying the criteria.
So I can speak to the funds, I can't speak to this application, but the difference between the fund, the Community Resilience Fund is about building social capital and social connections between people and communities, and then strengthening a community, so as a community they can respond to situations and thrive and develop initiatives. So it's about building a sense of community within a community. That differs from what is a social work intervention, which is why the other one went to Capital Endowment Fund, where a social work intervention works with an individual and ensures they get the right social work service, whether it's drug and alcohol work, whether it's budgeting work, whether it's an individual program that actually works with the individual, so the individual is resilient rather than actually building community or sense of capital. So that's the difference between a social work intervention and what the Community Resilience Fund is trying to achieve.
Andrew? Oh.
On this out of Capital Endowment Fund, are we able to do that?
I think we would need a report on that, but, you know, to be honest, I mean, I don't know how much is sitting in that fund. I haven't had any analysis of it. Hey?
I think we heard previously about 1.5. Yeah.
I mean, we could defer this one.
Well, I don't really want to defer it anymore because it's been deferred so much. But yeah. I just, yeah. And the other question I had was in terms of Ngāi Tahu, I think I've previously asked, have they been, or Te Pūkeno Kōkiri, have they been approached for funding for this, given that the research that we've had has shown that there's, I think, 70% of the people are Māori?
Yeah, I think it's a bit unfair to highlight Ngāi Tahu because there's a significant number who don't come from the South Island.
Well, I understand that, but they sit on the group. We've had advice that says that because we chair the group and we're involved in the group, we should consider funding. And I just thought, why wouldn't we approach other people on the group? I know, but we always seem to be going for joint funding, and we never seem to get any.
But this makes a grant of 200,000. But Andrew.
Thank you. So an amendment has been signalled that would have the effect of reducing this from 200 to 130,000. What would the effect of that be if we were to fund at the lower level? What would the effect of that be on what the programme was able to deliver and its outcomes?
Sure. It'd be a little bit difficult to quantify the numbers of people reached or anything like that, but certainly the program would be able to start and would still be able to start in a meaningful way at this point in time.
So when the report last came to Council, I asked probably the same question or a very similar question, and I was advised that regardless of the amount of funding, 50 people would be able to be assisted. That advice has obviously now changed, is that correct?
No, I beg your pardon, Councillor. No, it's a minimum of 50 people per year through the program. So this initiative would still seek to work with as many of them as possible. 200,000 was, as we said, to deliver it to its fullest effect. However, if Council was of a mind to reduce the funding, then we would anticipate with discussions that we've been having that meaningful work could nevertheless be started and commenced and carried out.
So is the number of people that can be helped directly proportional to the amount of funding that we put in?
No. Sorry, not in terms of being housed, but in terms of being further supported from there for this initiative.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So MSD is totally committed to the funding the housing part of the 50 people and maybe more, depending on how it develops this year. This is just in terms of the community connectedness, capacity development work that's supporting their ability to stay in the houses.
So, Phil and then Glenn, I'm a bit worried about the time, so...
Look, thank you for the report. Can I just ask you, like, around the Community Connections program, there's an amount of funding to be attached to it from us, as you've indicated. That's the request. Could I just wonder if you could perhaps describe for us about the challenges of actually operating that program with the people who these workers will be working with. Like you'll have been here before when we had the descriptions around the difficulties for the people who are begging. Clearly these people are in a different category. So I just wonder if you might just comment on some of the challenges that would be involved in terms of for the people who would be receiving this funding.
I think it's very clear that the work that we're talking about here is quite long-term work. It takes a long time to work with people who've been outside our community for a long period of time. And there has been a report produced to inform Housing First through a ComCare project around the last 8 months called Christchurch Street Homelessness 2018, a grassroots exploration of the situation, in which a person worked with people in our streets, 28 people, over that period of time, and gave specific help to about 18. If you read that report, and we're happy to circulate it to everyone, I think it's incredibly informative about what sort of work works with people who've been locked outside our community, so to speak, for a lengthy period of time. It really takes working alongside these people and getting to know them, making them re-trust our society, navigating them back into a frame of mind where they themselves can find it acceptable that housing will be provided for them, and that they can get back into community connections like we all probably take for granted who live in houses already. So it's the point of difference, I think, is it's the work that works, the evidence shows, is very long-term capacity building work that takes a long time. So the $200,000 for this is based around a discussion of how this program could be most effective once the people are housed. And certainly talking to the people at the Methodist Mission and the staff who are already working on this program, this has already all been confirmed. So we're happy to circulate that report. I think it will be a fantastic reading for people, and we will do that. But it certainly explains what I'm trying to say there.
Phil.
In the report, Jenny, thank you. In the report, there's been a count of the numbers who were then estimated. Yeah. My understanding is that count was quite some time ago, months ago, and I understand though that the agencies really are updating that. Could you just perhaps let us know where that's at in terms of how the estimates, the current estimates? Please, Jenny.
Yes, in answer to that question, the initial assessment of the numbers, you need to understand that it's very difficult to know the numbers of homeless. A lot of homeless people are hidden, particularly women who are homeless. And the research that was that was carried out through ComCare that I've just referred to, when agencies were asked, and this research worked with all the major agencies in Christchurch and the NGO agencies, staff there said they thought this was about a 60% underestimate of what was actually going on. The interesting points they also made was that they feel that most of the homeless are not on the streets in the inner city. Many are in the suburbs. They also made some interesting comments about the makeup of those people in terms of quite a point of difference between what they saw and what the initial assessment we had in our report. So it's very difficult to make those estimates.
Sorry, and Ms Mayor, I suppose the second point, if I may add to that, is MSD are currently discussing with local authorities and Housing First programs around the country a clear and consistent methodology for undertaking counts of the homeless, i.e. rough sleepers. So they're contemplating point in time or list type approaches. So that work is currently underway, so a consistent methodology for the program.
Okay, well, there are a couple of amendments that I would like to make to the resolution. One of them is to reduce the number in 3 to 130,000. Oh, just meanwhile, back in the kitchen, somebody's been making up a resolution. And that's to take into account, and I know that the other initiative, the outreach worker that was funded, was for a slightly different purpose, but it is a connected purpose in terms of the streets of Christchurch, and I think that residents would be somewhat surprised that it was an add-on rather than an inclusive sum. In terms of the item 5, I can see what has been attempted here, but I'm actually thinking myself that this is that this is making a grant when I don't think we should create an expectation. I think we should ask for a report back to council to consider a grant for year 2 of the Community Connections program after it has been in place for whatever period of time. So, and it could be considered as part of the annual plan. I really think that it's important that we get the Community Resilience Partnership Fund. I'm actually going to agree with something that Yanni said, and that is I know, take a photo, and that is that I think sometimes it would be better to look at the range of funds and the purpose, etc., and where we source the resources from in order to support what is a wider community responsibility. I mean, I'm all for us working in a collaborative fashion with the other agencies, but you know, there will be people who sort of kind of put up their hands and say that it's a that it's not a council responsibility. To me, it's a shared responsibility across the city, so which is why I'm not objecting to making a supportive first step. So this is not a foreshadowed motion. This is an amendment that I'm moving to the.
Was for it to be a new decision of council. That might not be clear.
Well, it says makes a grant of.
No, subject to the satisfaction of council. So when you weren't in the room when we had our discussion,
but I can see that, but it makes a decision that it will come from the Community Resilience Partnership Fund. You know, so I mean, it doesn't give us the option of considering another source.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I'm just moving an amendment, and there may be no seconder for it, but I'm just there are.
Because we discussed this a lot in the earlier item.
That's fine, and I haven't been here for all of that, but we've been here for questions, not for debate. So the debate is yet to happen. So haven't missed the debate. So we haven't got number 5 right for me yet. So I want to amend number 5. So there are 2 amendments that I want to make. One is to change the grant size in item 3 and to change the wording of item 5 to say request staff report to council. Leave it as you've written it, subject to the return of a monitoring report to the satisfaction account, request staff report to council seeking approval of a further grant. All right, so do I have a seconder for that amendment, for those amendments? Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah. We're happy to just take them without.
Well,
as mover and seconder.
But then we have to. You don't have to.
Okay.
You can vote for the amendments if you want to, but it doesn't matter. But if we do it the other way around now, then somebody will have to move to put it back. So, right. Okay, Phil.
Can I just sort of make a point about the process, Liam? Because I think a number of people may not be aware that, in fact, we received a memorandum from Paul and Jenny dated the 11th of July in response to some questions that Sarah asked. And it just seems to me that some people probably haven't seen that. It came I think, yesterday. And it's very clear around the future funding options for Housing First and possible partnerships. And it just seemed to answer a lot of the concerns that have been raised by Yanni and that you seem to be alluding to yourself, Leanne.
It says that there's further funding available from other people.
It does,
yep.
But it also explains the circumstances.
Yep.
group's not funding council. Council
It's
project.
not council. Yeah.
So it actually, you know, I think, yeah, it'd be
That's
good
why
to
we're working
test
with
that.
the collective to apply.
Just to infer that we're not eligible for funding for it because it's a council project, but it's not a council project.
Yeah.
The agencies would have to apply.
Yeah. Well, no, the collective would have to apply.
The collective, yeah.
To
All
the
right.
agencies.
So I'm. We've got it moved and seconded. We've got the amendment moved and seconded. So I'm just going to open it up for debate, and then I'll put the amendment, and then I'll put the motion. All right. Phil.
This matter has come to council several times, going back to February actually. And look, I think Bruce Rendell's here, and I want to thank Bruce, but also the other staff for the huge amount of work that's been done. I want to go back to Bruce's concept about where homelessness fits in the whole problem of housing in our city. And there's that whole continuum that Bruce has referred to, and we're talking about homelessness, which is on the left-hand side of that continuum. In the middle, we have social housing, and affordable housing is also there too, something which we as a council, I guess, struggle with in terms of the whole issue of housing in our city. I think, unfortunately, the people who are homeless are at that hard edge of that whole continuum, and we know that. And I guess we also know that this last winter has been brutally cold for people. We know how cold it is and how hard it is to get up in the morning, and we can only imagine what it is like for the hundreds of homeless people who are not only in our streets, but also in our suburbs, and are quite hidden, as the staff have told us. This part of the program is about the community connections part. It is a part that MSD haven't really fully addressed, and I compliment the staff for picking this part up and just looking at how, in fact, the Community Resilience and Partnership Fund fits to a T to address these issues, where people who are homeless still have their own communities, they still have their own family or whānau, and they need to remain connected with that, especially when they do opt to move into a house or a home or a unit. It has been indicated that as councillors we represent a lot of people, and we know that a lot will say, look, this isn't council responsibility, and we've heard that comment today. It's maybe more central governments. But the fact is, all of these people who are homeless on our streets and our suburbs, they are from our local communities. They are all New Zealanders. They all grew up in Christchurch. So what I also want to say is that the goal of Housing First is to end homelessness. I would remind you that that is also part of our City Council's housing policy. And it goes, Council will work with other agencies to address acute housing need and to eliminate homelessness. Not manage it, not touch it at the sides, just really to address it full on. And this is what this component of the program will do. There's certainly a gap in the MSD funding, and being rehoused, we know though that if the person won't succeed if they're isolated from their street friends. And I think in Christchurch we're really fortunate that we've got top housing agencies in the country really in our city, and they're committed to doing this work as a collective, and they worked hard at this in the past individually. Now they're joined up. Now our council have a really great opportunity to be part of that partnership. We know that this program won't address all of that continuum of housing which I referred to before, but it will at least increase the supply of houses for the people at the moment who have no houses, who are homeless, and that supply would not otherwise have been available unless we work through this program. I will also just say that it just seems to me that the people who are homeless actually are men and women just like you and me. If we're considering these recommendations today, and I would be extremely reluctant, and I've said to the Mayor to agree to the reduction, but we need to consider each and every one of us, we need to ask ourselves, what if that homeless person who I'm seeing on the street was my father, or my mother, or my sister, or my brother? So I really ask you to look at this, to make sure that as a council we succeed with this, that in fact we are true partners, Do we actually put our money where our mouth is around this, rather than just kind of saying it should be someone else's responsibility? I know that no one else here really says that. I'm aware that there's a lot of people who do have that view, and I'm asking us as a council to take a leadership role today and to actually go further than the amendment. And as I have indicated, it will be with a lot of reluctance that I would accept the amendment.
Aaron and then Dion.
I just want to address a couple of the points that were raised there. One is around that these people grow up in our neighbourhoods. A lot of them didn't. There's a lot that have moved into Christchurch, and there needs to be a bit more work done around who these people are and why they've come here. It strikes me as really odd that you would move to Christchurch post-disaster to be homeless. And so some of those things need to be solved, and we need more information around it. And, you know, amongst that community, there are a few scams going on as well. So let's not be blind, completely blind to that. But we should absolutely, genuinely help anyone who wants help and wants to change their life and wants a hand up. But not all of them do. And they don't necessarily want us to put them all in the same box, because they are quite different as people. And if it was my mother or my father or my brother living on the street, I'd take them home. I've got a house. I have people stay at my house all the time, and I would take them home. And so someone needs to point the finger at their families about taking them home as well, sometimes.
Dion.
We are the city of opportunity, where anything is possible, open to new ideas, new ways of doing things, and I've lost the plot on the last bit. But the reason that I wanted to say that is I just wanted to pull up one comment I just heard there. The reason people come to cities is because it is a place of opportunity. And we are a city of opportunity, and we should be selling ourselves as that and shouting from the rooftops and saying, come to Christchurch, look for those jobs, look for those opportunities. But if you fail, the city's not going to kick you out, it's going to support you. That is the message that I want everybody in this country to know, that Christchurch is that city. And we're not going to kick people out. We're not going to say, oh, look, you don't have a job, you don't have a house. We're not going to look after you, you can sit on the street and bloody beg. No, that's not the city I want us to live in. I'm sorry. I'm actually a little bit upset or annoyed that out of the recommendation from the staff, and then we've just cut it down to $70,000. These people are at the bottom. They have been cut out from services, they've been left out to dry, they have been, I can't say that word here, but they've just been left to rot. And we're just cutting it another $70,000. Look, this is an issue that actually we need to take some leadership on. I know there needs to be some work around us to go, look, we need to sort this out from all of these other issues that have been mentioned. There's street-based sex workers, there's the begging on the street, and these people have homes, but they're begging on the street because there's just poverty that they can't afford, and they've got drug and alcohol issues, all sorts of stuff. But the genuine homelessness, which this is about to address, these people need our support, and they need it now. There is Housing First out there that's going to address the 50 people each year to get those chronic homelessness, but this is actually going to address a little bit more than those 50 people that have got chronic homeless issues. There are people in our streets who are working with these people for nothing. I know a couple of those people, and they need to be brought into the tent here. There are some issues and there are some concerns I have around this whole, the way it's working, but we need to get it off the ground and actually then look at it and say, how can we bring all of these street people or the street issues into under the tent and actually work properly? So I won't be supporting the amendment. I'll be supporting the $200,000 because that's what the staff recommended. That's what everything's been based on at the moment. And we just need to show some leadership and then address it, and then look at it. So I really implore everybody here to say, look, let's just support the $200,000, bring that back to us, and you know, with the other work that's going on in 6 months or whatever it is time for the long-term plan when we amend that, and how can then we start working together and actually have a bit more of a collective approach around this, because I do not want to see the people on the street suffering any longer.
Glenn.
Thank you. Let's talk some money, eh? And there's different currencies in this whole thing. So $4 million from government over 2 years for this project in the city. We're talking 200,000. That compares to a ratio in Auckland of 3.7 million from government, and 1.7 million from that council. The cost-benefit ratio to me, it doesn't stack up. It goes way beyond it. So for the price of half a house, $200,000, that will give rise to a yield of 50 houses this year and 50 the next. So we do cost benefit all the time. So I don't think we can look past that. So the price of half a house gives rise to 50 places, shelter, a basic human right this year, and 50 in the next. Also wish to point out 200,000 is about 1/3 the price of a park upgrade in the city. It's interesting, the whole debate over whose job it is. It's a bit like a custody battle here. You take the baby. No, you take the baby. Well, actually, sorry, this is a time for us to show leadership. Our reputation as a city sits on this. Are we going to house people or not? Our obligations do extend to us by virtue of being, as a country, a signatory to the Universal Bill of Rights. We need to ensure that we give the full money to this today, and I take on board the Deputy Mayor's question to Paul. While it may not affect the actual quantum of houses provided, it will have a diminishing effect on those wraparound services that follow that housing. So I please urge you to support this fully. To me, this recovery means little if we are going to push ahead with big fancy projects and not care for our people. There is a chance that actually if we don't attend to this and end homelessness by next year, as originally said, that by the time we build this stadium, visitors to this city are still going to see people languishing on the streets. Is that what we want? In the housing policy, it talks about, as Phil has said, the actions we can take right across the spectrum of housing. Housing is a system. It's a bit like Jenga. If you take a piece out near the bottom, the whole lot falls to bits. So we have to do all that we can right across the spectrum if we're going to have good, effective, optimal housing outcomes for our community. So I please ask you to support this. As I said, you can have all the flash buildings you like in the city, and no disrespect, you can have all the flash cycleways, but if you can't house your people, to me, in my mind, it means diddly squat. Thank you.
Vicky, then Mike, Jimmy.
I'd just like to reiterate what Dion was saying, and the bit that he forgot at the end was that anything is possible in this city. And from my point of view, it's quite possible as a city that we can actually solve homelessness. And I think that's what we're on about, making sure that we have a socially inclusive city that includes everyone. And that means that because we start with different resources in the community, that we do things differently for various groups. If you're on the street and you're not on a benefit, it costs you $110 to get your ID to go into WINZ to get your benefit. That's very difficult to get if you're on the street with no benefit and no source of money. There are a lot of barriers that are put in your way. If you stop and talk to a number of the homeless, you'll find all sorts of stories. There is no one formula that leads to homelessness. And there is no one type of person that is homeless in the city. And you know from the work that you've done that actually it can be quite a long process in making sure that they are securely housed in what will become their home. So this has come before us a really lot of times. I would like us to go with the 200,000. I'm fine about the amendment. I would just prefer it was 200,000 for 2 years so they could get on with it. I met with Housing First the other day. I was hugely impressed by the staff that they had, by the work that they're doing. They're about to open their office soon so that people have a place to go and to take work from that. I think if we're going to be bold and ambitious as a city, and we've set the goal of ending homelessness, that's part of our housing policy. It's on the continuum. We've done a small part of it today in terms of the shared equity fund, changing some slight things about that, and that's out in the marketplace at the moment. So we can actually help people at that end. We know we want warm, dry homes. That helps people at that end. We know we need more social housing. We know we need more affordable housing. And right at this end, the people who are actually in -4 degrees, living on Hereford Street or any other street, Riccarton, in Hagley Park, in a number of locations that I could name, that we cannot walk away. This fund is actually a joint fund with government. So even if we do 200,000 a year, only 100,000 is actually coming from the City Council. I think I think we just have to get on and do this. I'm not happy with reducing the fund. I think we have to prove that as a city we do have some really bold goals. And one of those is about all of us, because they are somebody's brother. And it doesn't matter whether they come from Christchurch or grew up here. I don't care. It makes no odds. They are living on our streets, and that's not okay in this city. They all have stories that are radically different, and that need some compassionate understanding from the rest of the community to change their situation. And I would expect, if I was living on the streets, that the City Council of Christchurch would actually be compassionate about that. So I will be voting for the 200,000. I prefer it straight for 2 years, but if we have to go with that amendment, I'll go with that.
I'm just going to put myself on the speaking list because I think it's important, given the context, as to explain why I've asked for Council to consider reducing the grant in the first year, and to review where it comes from beyond that. The Community Resilience Partnership Fund was set up for a specific purpose, but that's not the point. The main point is that we've already granted $70,000 to an outreach social work outreach service, which will be hosted by the Christchurch City Mission for 12 months. I can't believe that that's not a contribution to what we're trying to achieve here. And it was specifically acknowledging the increase of people street begging or sleeping rough in the central city and suburban surrounds, with people with high and complex needs. They're all the people that we've been talking about. So all I'm saying is that the money that we are allocating today, from a responsible point of view, we are contributing $200,000 if you agree to the 130. Otherwise, it is $270,000 that is being contributed by the council to what is a shared problem. And I agree. I don't think for 1 minute that it is acceptable that people are sleeping rough in our city. I don't believe for 1 minute that it is acceptable that people are reduced to begging for an income. And I do agree with Aaron that there are many varied complex issues that sit in behind this, and it is not all as it seems for some, but not others. And I agree also with Vicky, everything that she said about the nature of the people that are concerned. And yes, I do stop and talk to people, and I do understand the nature of circumstances. You know, for some people, just a moment's inattention on a road can lead to a brain injury, which can lead to the loss of a job, the loss of their family, the loss of their home, the loss of everything. And yes, people do travel to big cities because there are opportunities there. But I believe that the council, you know, with its financial constraint that it has at the moment, I don't think it's unreasonable to say we're making two levels of contribution. One level, we're paying half of the social work outreach service, which will really respond. And I want to acknowledge Anne Galloway and the role that she's played in bringing together, this, Stronger Christchurch group, Safer Christchurch. Sorry, I keep getting mixed up with all the groups. But it has brought together representatives from Central City Business, City Mission, Drug Arm, Work and Income, Police, Durham Street Parish, Mental Health Resources and Education Centre. You know, so it's brought together all of these things. We're working in collaboration and partnership, and I don't think that it's right that we just sit here and make that longer term commitment or the higher level of commitment. I just think we've responded in a matter of urgency to the way that our community has asked us to respond with the outreach service. It's the same organisation. I believe they're going to be working in partnership. I just you know, so that's why I've moved the amendment. I don't want anyone to think that I don't care about the people that are sleeping rough in our city. I do care very much. Mike, and then Jimmy, and then Andrew, and then Anne, and then Yanni.
That's right. I'll be quick. Homelessness is a serious issue in our city, and the number of people who live in this situation for a city of our size is not good enough. And society is measured by how it treats its most vulnerable, and I support Council's position in this partnership approach. This has actually been a really good and passionate debate, and I will actually be supporting the amendments.
Jimmy?
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Yeah. Council, recently we just adopt the strategic framework. Dion, he mentioned earlier, highlight all the vision, but I would like to review all the community outcome, particularly in here are 4 the community outcome. The first one, strong communities. Here, particularly defined quite clearly, strong sense of community, active participation in civic life, and a safe and a healthy community. These 3, you know, that's quite very crucial for us. But as a council, how do we can make the happen, make the smoothness successful? I don't think so. The 200K, you know, is enough to me. But at least give us this kind of we have intention, would like to achieve this community the outcome. Especially our city is still in the final stage of the earthquake recovery. Now, we mentioned it's a regeneration, but I do hope it's not only regenerate. One day we can become the kind of transformation. We still have probably a long way to go, but how do we to working together? I think that's very important. Especially we see the paragraph 4.1 here, the 4 point. These all crucial. The point, you know, looks like this the kind of the project fully comply with the council the community outcome. So it's difficult for me, you know, to reduce the staff original recommendation. So I think probably 200K is suitable. You know, I don't want to reduce that one, especially 4.2. We can see here. Purpose this one for support project, strengthen community by increasing community participation, connectiveness, and resilience. And intention, objective, fully compliant with our community outcome. Yeah. So I'm reluctant to support the amendment. I would like to keep the original one.
Andrew?
Thank you. I talked earlier about my disappointment every time I see people sleeping on the street, on Hereford Street, Colombo Street, elsewhere in the city, and there is certainly a safety perception around that, and there may be a reality of safety, not necessarily for the people that see the perception, but maybe even for the people sleeping on the street. This is happening in cities all over the world, but from our point of view this afternoon it's happening here in Christchurch, and it shouldn't be. So that's been well canvassed in the debate already. I was particularly interested in the answers to the questions that I asked, given the answers to similar questions the last time this came in front of Council. And the last time I was led to believe that the outcome would be the same regardless of the amount that we put in. Today it becomes clear that the amount of work we do is directly proportional to the amount of money we put in. And the earlier questions around how staff had arrived at 200,000 in their recommendation, I think those answers were particularly relevant as well. So, I mean, whilst I realise that we wouldn't want to spend any more on any initiative than we need to, equally we need to spend what we need to get the best outcome from work that we're doing. We shouldn't be doing things half-heartedly. We should be wanting the best that we possibly can get from everything that we do. And here I am now convinced, because of the answers to the questions, that 200,000 is the correct amount. I certainly understand the motivation for, looking at ways that we can deliver something meaningful for less than that. But given the answers to the questions, I'm certainly very much on the page of the 200,000, and I will be supporting that and therefore not supporting the amendment. I also found the wording that Dion was struggling to find when he was speaking earlier. So Council's vision, Christchurch is a city of opportunity, open to new ideas, new people and new ways of doing things, a city where anything is possible. The two words that were missing, Council's vision, Christchurch is a city of opportunity for all.
Anne?
I can't support the amendment to reduce the money either. I think that I understand completely that we have families who are really struggling to stay in their own homes, and to see us spending money on those who some people think don't deserve our support is probably quite difficult. However, I think the question is not about what we spend or the amount that we spend, but the cost of not spending that money. I think that my experience recently of supporting somebody into a house is that you get a huge amount of time, money, resource can be put into getting somebody into a home for them only to stay for a very short time because they do not have the support that they need to stay there. Many of the people that are on the street do have homes. So why are they not there? They're not there because they have a multitude of needs that have to be addressed to help them stay in those homes. So for me, this is, can be brought right down to a financial question. What is the best use of resource here? And I think by putting this $200,000 into this program, we're actually going to make the best use of the resource that we already have, which is, I think, prudent and good stewardship. So I will be supporting the original recommendation for $200,000 for this program.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yanni and then Pauline. Is that it? Because then I'll come to Sarah to wrap up the debate. Yep. Yanni, Pauline, cool. Sarah.
So just to start off, I mean, I think, as people have said, this is a city issue, and we can choose to ignore it, we can choose to address it, and I'd like to be on the side that chooses to address this. But we also have to talk to central government. There are reasons why Christchurch has a higher prevalence of some of these issues than other cities and other communities in New Zealand, and some of that is largely contingent on central government's approach to seeing Christchurch as a soft touch where they can not fund mental health services properly, they can not fund our social housing adequately, and we will just continuously pick up the pieces. The thing I love about Christchurch is that traditionally it's been a city that has always had a very strong social conscience, and it's also been a city that believes in that everyone should have an equality of opportunity, but also of life. It's the thing that means that people here can have a pretty reasonable quality of life that is a lot more affordable than many other places around the world and around New Zealand. Just to put this into context, I do struggle to understand how some of the people that are criticising, those of us that are questioning the use of this money, can, just to put it into context, we give DCs, rates-funded DCs, to a number of organisations in our central city. And I certainly am concerned, and I won't support the amendment. I was initially going to support it, but I've heard from some of the people that have been doing the work, some of the councillors who I know have been putting a lot of effort into it, and I've taken on board what they've said around the impact of us needing to do something and the impact on these individuals. But to put this into context, the amendment, and even the full amount, is less than the rates funding we give to Christ College, where a uniform costs $1,700 for a student. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable that we give tens of millions of dollars to some of the wealthiest organisations in this city and are sitting here having a debate about $200,000 to address homelessness. So I'm going to support this, not the amendment. I think we need to start really working together with groups. I don't quite understand why post-earthquake and possibly a little bit before the earthquake, the idea of collaboration seems to consist of us having to fund everything and many other people coming on board. There are other organisations and groups and charities in the city who are very wealthy, who are making huge amounts of money from what's gone on, and I don't see their contributions to some of these issues, and I don't believe it's fair for council to continuously have to pick up all of the pieces. I leave you with one final thought, and that is, if we really want to end homelessness, then we need to ensure that we have housing. We currently do not have enough money to fix our social housing. We're cutting the number by 500 in our long-term plan, and we are woefully inadequately spending to repair some of our units. If we want people not to be homeless, we do need to provide housing. And I firmly believe that hopefully today can be a turning point where we say this is an important issue, and it's not just about providing services, although that's important, it is also equally as important that we start to consider how we fund the repair and the increase in social housing that we own in this city, because I think that's equally as important as the services that go around it.
Pauline and then Sarah.
Yeah, thank you. Look, I think the issue here, I think that everyone around the table, including the Mayor, fully supports these projects, both of them. But I think the issue here is that whether we look at these as two separate ones, or whether the one before, the $70,000 support workers, is wrapped into this. Now, when I've gone through my reading, I read them as two separate projects, and that is the way I'm looking at it now. I don't want to wrap the first one into this one because I think it's going to weaken it. And they're both partnership funds, so it means we're not really footing the whole bill, which is great. The first one's a partnership with the City Mission, this one's a partnership with the Government Fund. It's a perfect fit. And as far as, I just want to address Aaron's question, because, or his comments about if you saw your mother or your father or your brother and was homeless, you'd take them home. Well, look, I've had first-hand experience of that. It's not easy. In fact, just about ripped our whole family apart over a period of years. And there's no single fix. No matter how big your heart is or how big your wallet is, we need help, serious help for a serious issue. And that's why I want to see these as two separate projects. I also want to commend Anne for the work you've done. And let's get onto this and lift our city up, lift our people up, and really look at this as a resilience project. I will be not supporting the amendment.
Sarah.
Thank you. Now, these are... This is an incredibly valuable program. There's absolutely no doubt about that, and that's why I've been happy to move the original motion. And I have absolutely no doubt that everyone around the table supports the program and the previous one themselves. Councillor Cotter clearly doubts that, but I think everyone values those programs. And it doesn't matter where people grow up. They're all human beings. They're all, part of the city now. This funding doesn't get people off the street. This is for the wraparound services, the additional wraparound services on top of the ones that MSD will already be funding. And while Councillor Turner pointed out that staff had said, yes, with more money you do more work, staff also were very, very clear that the $130,000 would provide a very meaningful start to this program. In the advice that we heard just before. And this allows for more funding to be applied for from other organisations, like we've put in one of the resolutions, and doesn't preclude a further application if needed. This isn't our money, this is ratepayers' money, and we are bound to be prudent with it, which is why I'll be supporting the amendment. And Councillor Cotter...
She's allowed to do that.
What?
Yeah. Yes, you can.
Absolutely.
For goodness sake.
Absolutely.
I said that ages ago.
We talked about this at the beginning. And
yeah.
Yep. And Councillor Cotter is right. There are two separate projects that we've looking at funding today. But there has been some confusion in the debate. So there have been people, Councillor Galloway, who have talked about those people on the street but who have homes and who are really struggling because they have complex problems. That's not what this fund is for. That's the one we've just funded from the $70,000 from the Capital Endowment Fund. And we've put $70,000 towards that particular work, but that's not what's funded for this. This is for people who don't have homes, who are going to be going into homes and have those complex projects. Which is why I think the Mayor is completely right in the fact that they are linked, and that $200,000 is a completely appropriate first, but we've done it through two different funds because it's a very complex program. There are other people working in this space already, and our contribution isn't the end of the work that we do on this. It's just a start. So I'm happy with the amendments.
So, clearly the dollars and cents isn't going to pass by way of amendment, but I will put it. But what I wonder whether are we absolutely can we deal with the amendment to clause 5 separately from the amendment to clause 3, because I really don't want to. I mean, if I would just do that, and then if it doesn't pass, then we're stuck with the Community Resilience Partnership Fund. But I really do want us to look at something else. But you know, I mean, it's agnostic at this point. So I'll move. I'll put the amendment to clause 3. Sorry. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. No. That is lost. And item 5, I'll put the amendment. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. Well, okay. So those in favour, put up your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's so how many are left? Yeah, those against. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
There's 15 of us here.
Eh?
So I think, did you count yourself the first time?
Oh, did I count myself?
I don't think you did. I think it's 8. I think it's 8 to 7.
Those in favour say aye. I mean, put up your hand.
I haven't voted.
Okay.
Oh, that'll be why.
I've lost the wills.
Yes, I know.
This one's really straightforward. I can't believe how much time we spend on this.
I understand that. And I said that I was going to put it as 2 separate amendments. So it hasn't carried, so it stands. So I will now put the complete motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you.